You ever notice how some people can make huge money mistakes, lose jobs, get divorced, move cities, and somehow they still land on their feet financially, while others work hard for 10, 15 years and stay one crisis away from disaster? If you have felt that tightness in your chest when you open your banking app, or that little spike of panic when someone talks about the future, and you realize you do not really have one financially planned, you are not lazy and you are not stupid. You are just living in a world where you were never taught the rules of financial power, not how to save $5 on coffee power. Power as in, I am not owned by my bills. I can say no, I can walk away, I can take a risk without my whole life collapsing. Machiavelli watched kings and princes, but the same laws apply to money. Some people think money is just math. You earn, you spend, you save. But money is also psychology, power, status, fear, ego, survival. It controls people who never learned how to control it. So instead of me giving you the same basic advice you have heard 1,000 times, let us look at this through a Machiavellian lens. Not evil, not manipulative, just brutally honest about how power actually works. I want to walk you through 7 laws of financial power. Not quick fixes, not manifest it, and it will come. These are laws that if you actually start applying them even imperfectly will push you out of the zone of forever, stressed and stuck, and into never truly poor again. Not instantly rich, but never powerless. All right, let's go. The first law of financial power is this: see your money world as it is, not as you wish it was. Machiavelli's whole thing was brutal realism. He said in nicer Renaissance language, if you lie to yourself about how people are, you will lose. The same is true about money. People stay poor not because they do not care, but because they live inside financial fantasies. You know how it goes. I make enough, I just have bad luck. I'll start managing my money. When I earn more. It's not that bad. I don't even want to look at the numbers. That last one is common. People are more scared of checking their bank accounts than horror movies because if they look, they have to admit the truth. Here is the Machiavellian move. The moment you look directly at the ugly truth, you stop being owned by it. If you have never done this, I want you to imagine sitting down with a notebook or a simple spreadsheet and writing out 3 things. How much is coming in every month on average? What your fixed costs are. Rent, food, bills, transport, debt. What you are actually spending on everything else. Not what you think you are spending, what you are actually spending. Look at statements if you have to feel the discomfort. That feeling is not failure, that is power waking up. Because when you stop saying, I'm just bad with money, and you start saying I spend 40% of my income on things I do not even remember a week later, suddenly it is not a story anymore, it is a number and numbers can be changed. You cannot outwork a lie. You are telling yourself the first law is no more lies. See clearly the second law of financial power lives in the gap, not in the income. Most people chase higher income and ignore the one thing that actually creates financial power. The gap between what you earn and what you spend. That gap is your surplus. Surplus is where power lives. You can earn a lot and still be poor if your lifestyle swallows everything. You can earn modestly and build quiet power if you protect and grow that gap. Machiavelli watched rulers who taxed their people into oblivion. On paper, they were rich. In reality, everything was stretched so thin that one bad harvest and the whole kingdom snapped. No buffer, no surplus, no power. Your life is the same. If every raise you get is instantly converted into a new car payment, better apartment, more subscriptions, fancy gadgets, then you are just dressing up your poverty. Here is the simple, painful, freeing truth. You cannot escape feeling poor until there is a consistent gap between what comes in and what goes out. Now, I am not going to sit here and say, just stop buying coffee and you'll be a millionaire. That is dumb. For some people, the problem is spending. For others, the problem is income. For most, it is both. But your Machiavellian task is this. Every month, even if it is small, you create and protect a surplus. $10, $50, $500, whatever level you are at. That surplus does not exist to make you feel good. It's your army, your leverage. It is the space that stops you from being owned by every setback. If your life feels like a constant emergency, it is probably because there is no gap. Your mission is not to be perfect. It is to widen that gap inch by inch. Maybe it means saying no to one social thing this week. Maybe it means negotiating a bill. Maybe it means learning a higher paying skill so you're not draining yourself at minimum wage forever. Income matters, but the gap is what makes you powerful. That leads to the third law. Never bow to a single source of money. Machiavelli warned rulers not to rely entirely on one ally or one mercenary army. If your whole power is borrowed from one source, that source owns you. They can cut you off and suddenly you have nothing. Translate that to your life. One job, one client, one person paying all the bills, one platform for all your income. It feels stable until it isn't. Then it is panic. Never be poor again doesn't mean never have problems. It means you are never again in a position where one email, one breakup, one policy change destroys you financially. You might not be able to change this overnight, but the smart move is to start building cracks in that wall of dependency. If you have a job, that is fine. Keep it. But can you start building something on the side that makes even a small amount of money? Freelance work, a tiny online service, tutoring, a weekend hustle, an extra shift somewhere else, even a resale side. Business. The goal is not to become the next billionaire. The goal is to send a signal to yourself. I do not have only one master. If you are a freelancer who depends on one big client, your project is to find client number 2, even if they are smaller. That way you are not terrified of losing the first one. If your partner is the main provider, fine. But you still want some income, some skills, something that keeps you from being completely trapped if that relationship changes. Because here is the thing. The person or institution who feeds you can control you unless you have somewhere else to eat. Machiavellian financial power is not about greed. It is about safety, options, the ability to walk away from toxic situations because you have more than one path. So ask yourself honestly right now, how many sources of income do I actually have? Not fantasies, actual dollars. If the answer is 1, do not beat yourself up. Just mark that as a weakness to slowly correct. You are building a network of streams, not a giant waterfall overnight. The 4th law of financial power. Make money that does not always need you. In old times, a prince's power came not only from soldiers he could call, but from systems that ran whether he was awake or asleep. Taxes, farms, trade routes. He could sleep. And still the kingdom generated resources. Most people today are stuck in one single mode, trading time for money. If they stop moving, the money stops. Look, there is nothing wrong with working for money. But if that is your only game, you will always feel one illness, one layoff, one burnout away from collapse. Never be poor again means you slowly add things to your life that keep working when you are not. That might sound huge and impossible, but it starts very small. Maybe it is a piece of digital work you create once and sell multiple times. Maybe it is a YouTube channel, a blog, a course, an ebook, a template, a design pack. Something where your effort today can pay you next year in tiny drips. Maybe it is building skills that command higher pay so each hour of your life buys you more freedom. Maybe it is investing in simple, boring long-term assets when you have surplus instead of treating every extra dollar like it is itching to be spent. You do not need to become obsessed with passive income in a fantasy way. Most so-called passive income is very active up front, but the principle is solid. Build systems and assets that multiply your effort. Think in terms of leverage. If you teach someone something once in a room, that is 1-to-1. If you record yourself teaching it, and the video lives online, that is 1-to-many. If you train someone else to do what you do, that is duplication. If you write code, design a template, create a product, build a brand, those things can work when you are tired. Machiavelli would say, the powerful do not only fight with their own hands, they build structures that fight for them. So your question becomes, what can I build this year that still benefits me 3 years from now? Again, it does not have to be huge. But if every year of your life you add one small asset, one useful system, one new skill that increases leverage, you are compounding power instead of just compounding fatigue. The 5th law of financial power. Position yourself where money wants to go. Machiavelli knew that some cities, some roads, some alliances were naturally richer in opportunity. If you controlled a trade route, you did not have to beg for wealth. It flowed past you by default. In the modern world, place is not just geography. It is also industry, skill set, network, and even mindset. If you are stuck in a dead industry that is shrinking every year, you can be the hardest worker and still be fighting the tide. If your skills are easy to replace, employers will treat you like you are easy to replace. If you only know people who are broke and chaotic, guess what kind of financial ideas and habits are going to surround you? This does not mean you abandon your entire life overnight. but it does mean you look up from your current grind long enough to ask, is there a richer stream nearby, and what would it take for me to get closer to it? Maybe that means learning a digital skill that is in demand so you can get out of physical grind jobs that destroy your health. Maybe it means applying to jobs in healthier companies instead of staying forever in the local toxic workplace just because you know it. Maybe it means joining an online community of people who are actually talking about building and growing, not just complaining. Maybe it literally means moving cities or countries at some point if your environment is completely economically dead. That is not possible for everyone. But just allowing yourself to consider that option can change how you think. Sometimes positioning is smaller and more subtle. You might already be in a decent field, but you are invisible. So you start putting your work where decision makers can see it. You volunteer for projects that are tied to profit, instead of always doing the tasks nobody notices. You position yourself closer to where money decisions are made, instead of staying quietly in the corner. If you feel like you are constantly swimming against the current, it might not be that you are weak. You might just be in the wrong river. Machiavellian financial power is not only about squeezing pennies, it is about putting yourself where the opportunity density is higher, even if it is uncomfortable at first. The sixth law of financial power. Protect your downside like a paranoid ruler. Machiavelli's princes could make bold moves because they were always thinking, what can ruin me? What is the worst that can happen if this goes wrong? They shored up their defenses before they went chasing glory. Most people do the opposite with money. They chase shiny opportunities while their financial floor is made of paper. No emergency fund, no basic insurance, no buffer, one unexpected bill and, boom, debt spiral. Then more desperation, more bad decisions, more vulnerability. Never be poor again is not just about making more and more. It is very much about making sure that one bad moment does not send you down a staircase that takes years to climb back up. Practically, this means you aim to build a small emergency fund. Not because it is fun, because it is a shield. At first it might be $100, then $500, then 1 month of expenses, then more. Do not let perfect be the enemy. Any shield is better than none. You are careful with high-interest debt. Some debt can be leverage. A lot of consumer debt is a chain. You do not beat yourself up if you have it, but you make a real plan to stop the bleeding and slowly attack it instead of pretending it does not exist. You do not gamble your entire savings on hype. That includes coins you do not understand, random once-in-a-lifetime schemes, or that friend of a friend's guaranteed thing. A prince does not bet the entire kingdom on one roll of the dice. You think in terms of downside. Ask, if this goes wrong, what happens? Can I recover? If the answer is I will be destroyed, you do not do it, or you find a way to lower the risk first. Risk is not bad. You will have to take risks to grow. But there is a difference between calculated risk and blind hope. Machiavelli would rather you move carefully than die gloriously. One boring example, basic health. If illness can wipe you out financially, then working yourself into the ground without rest is not hustle. It is self-sabotage. Sleep, food, and basic health choices are financial decisions too. Because if your body collapses, your income collapses. You do not have to be obsessed with safety. Just paranoid enough to make sure that one bad day does not erase 5 years of effort. The seventh law of financial power. Play the quiet game. Machiavelli warned rulers not to flaunt their power in ways that made everyone resentful and jealous. True power often moves quietly, keeps its plans to itself, and lets people underestimate it. In the money world, this means stop trying to look rich. Start trying to be free. A lot of people stay poor because they are constantly trying to perform wealth for other people. The newest phone, the car they cannot actually afford, the apartment that looks good on social media but chains them to rent. The nights out that destroy their budget because they do not want to be boring. They are like a prince who spends everything on parades and gold-plated armor while the walls of the city crumble. Financial power is often invisible. It is the savings no one sees. The investments that are not flashy. The modest lifestyle even when you could flex. The refusal to upgrade everything just because your income went up. It is also the refusal to explain your whole financial life to everyone. You do not owe people an explanation for why you are not going out every weekend. You do not need to show receipts for your progress to people who are not helping you build it. Play the quiet game. You might be driving an old car and people think you are broke while you are stacking an emergency fund and learning skills that will double your income. You might be renting a cheaper place than your friends while they laugh at it, not realizing you are buying back your future options. You might be putting extra hours into building an online income stream. Nobody understands. They see just a little channel or some side project. You see a future soldier in your financial army, and you do not have to convince them. Time will. Quiet financial power is less about "I will show them," and more about "I refuse to ruin my future to impress people who do not care about my future." If you combine this with the other laws, clear realism, protecting the gap, building multiple sources, creating leverage, positioning yourself well, protecting the downside, you become dangerous in the best way, not to others, to poverty. So take a breath for a second. You might be thinking, "This is a lot. My situation is messy. I am in debt. My income is low. My habits are bad. Where do I even start?" That is fair. You are allowed to feel overwhelmed. You are allowed to feel late. But you are not powerless. Remember, Machiavelli was not talking to perfect princes. He was talking to flawed, impulsive, chaotic human beings trying to survive. You do not need to master all 7 laws at once. You just need to pick one and begin. Maybe for you the first step is Law 1. Finally looking at your real numbers without flinching. You open the app. You look at your balance, your debt, your bills. You write it down. You admit it. That alone separates you from most people. Maybe for you it is Law 2. Protecting the gap. This month you choose one expense to reduce or remove that does not actually make your life better. Not deprivation for its own sake, just smart cuts. You put that saved amount aside, even if it is small. Maybe it is Law 3. Adding one tiny income stream. Freelance 1 gig. Sell something you do not use. Try a small experiment, not because it will make you rich, but because it proves to you that you are not trapped with one source. Maybe it is Law 4. Building something that keeps working after you stop. You start learning a skill, recording something, writing something, designing something. It will feel slow and clumsy, but it is a seed. Maybe it is Law 5. Positioning. You update your resume. You apply to 3 better jobs. You sign up to learn a skill that gets paid where the world is going, not where it has been. Maybe it is Law 6. Downside protection. You decide, before I chase anything big, I'm getting my first 100% saved. Then even that changes how you sleep. Maybe it is Law 7, the quiet game. You make peace with looking less successful in the short term so that you can be more free in the long term. You stop needing to flash every purchase on social media. You stop racing people who are secretly drowning. You do not need to become cold, greedy, or obsessed with money for this. In fact, the more power you have, the less you will obsess, because you are not constantly in survival mode. Never be poor again is not a boast. It is a promise you slowly make to yourself, backed by actions. I will never again hand all my power to one job, one person, one habit. I will never again be afraid to look at the truth. I will never again choose looking rich over being safe. You are going to slip. You will buy stupid things sometimes. You will have months where you fall off. That does not break the laws. You just climb back on. The princes Machiavelli wrote about made mistakes all the time. The ones who survived were the ones who learned and adjusted instead of living in denial. Right now you have enough awareness to start shifting. That already puts you in a different category than the version of you who was just drifting. So here is a simple challenge, and then you can decide what you want to do with this. Before you go back to your normal life, pick one law and write down a specific action you will take in the next 48 hours. Not "I will be better with money." Something like, "I will track every expense for the next 7 days. I will list all my debts and interest rates on paper. I will apply to 2 better paying jobs. I will message 1 person about a freelance opportunity. I will cancel 1 subscription I do not use. I will put aside my first 20 as the start of my emergency fund. I will block out 1 hour to learn a skill that has a real market. Make it tiny, make it concrete, make it soon." Because from this point on, every small step you take using these laws is you quietly building a different life. A life where money is still important, but it is not a constant threat, not a weapon pointed at your head. A life where you can look at your future and feel something other than dread. That is financial power. And once you start tasting that even a little, you will not want to go.